this tab. So tell me your name, a little bit about yourself, and how you get started with the American Housing Corporation. Then we'll go into what the company actually is.
My name is Bobby Fijan. I'm a co-founder of the American Housing Corporation, and we use innovative manufacturing methods to build row homes designed for families. And God willing, we'll build millions across the United States.
Right. So one of the big issues, politically, and not just politically, but just in everyday life for Americans, is affordability. How are we actually going to tackle the housing crisis without, screwing over either financial firms, screwing over labor, or people already owning homes? So how do you plan to tackle the affordability with the American Housing Corporation? How do you initially plan to address that?
Well, I think it's first important to define like what the housing crisis is. And I'd say the way that I think about it is that, and this might sound a little bit pedantic to people, but that the housing crisis means that people cannot afford homes where they want to live. And again, you can see that of like, there are plenty of affordable homes in Rust Belt cities or relatively more affordable. The existing home builders can build relatively inexpensive homes on the outskirts of the metro. But the problem generally is that we can't build homes, again, like I said, where people want. So the way that we are trying to tackle that part of the problem is we are trying to build homes so that people who live in cities and want to have kids can have a home and stay in the neighborhood where they're already in. And that part of the problem has to do with the construction costs being particularly high for that kind of construction. So our, new technology innovation methods means that we can solve that problem. So other people will build continue to build the other stuff. We will build in those, I'd say wherever someone lives in an apartment, I want them to be able to have kids and stay in their neighborhood. Probably not in their apartment
Right.
building, but in one of the types of units that we build.
Right. Well, and I think you're right about where people want to build, because there are plenty of affordable homes, maybe in neighborhoods that aren't so great,
That's
or in
right.
places that don't offer a lot of economic opportunity. So it really is like, a mismatch between where there's actually demand and where there's, available supply. But, you talk about the construction practices and how you're going to innovate on that. What allows you to innovate and keep the price low and also, economically practical? Because for a lot of homes, I know that you guys are taking a modular approach, but for a lot of homes, the issue is the material price is too high, regulations, that sort of stuff. So how can you innovate on the technology side to keep prices affordable while still making a profit?
It's very hard. So we're a real estate company, but we are fundamentally a technology company. And my partner Riley is a brilliant engineer, and we have unbelievable team members working on that, doing that exact thing. But I would say the general way that I can describe it is that we are building out of very different kinds of materials that are more durable, that are higher quality, that last longer, that are close to, like, anyone who lives in one of these older cities has walked around, even a Baltimore that's like degraded a bit, like the quality of the housing stock, that house is still standing 90 years later, right? And it's even more so in places like, Brooklyn Heights or Georgetown or South Philadelphia. I mean, these were built as working class neighborhoods and they're just not done there. So I would say first, we are trying to build a product that is very different. And we are using different methods. So we're not using 2x4s. We're not using wood. We're using, a fiberglass reinforced like cement board. We're building extremely large panels that work well with industrial manufacturing in a factory so that we can prepare these panels so that when they go on site, our installation folks only have to click them together. So I'd say what we really want
Right.
to, where we really see like where our innovation can be felt in as a business or seen there is like when something shows up, it's going to go very quickly. The home will go up quickly because it was designed in a factory, not just designed to take the same materials on site and take the factory and ship them there. We're using stuff entirely different. And that's why, however, and I think this is the other important point is like, I want, and I think this is probably why, you and other people have been interested in it. I want to build stuff that's pretty. I think far too much of like
Right.
existing either apartments or single family homes out of a good desire of trying to make things affordable, they make things cheap or they make things not high quality. And so we want to build things that we'd be proud to own for a long time and that we would be proud to sell someone so they could, generationally like bring multiple people in there, right? That they could pass down. I don't think there's anyone who buys not to talk too poorly about other people's products, he says as he does it. I don't think that many other people anticipate passing down the homes they're buying from some of these, existing new stuff that's going up. They're buying it because they need it, not because they're going to build a legacy like actually at that address.
Right. Well, and that's definitely something you can't do with an apartment is build a
Yep.
legacy. So I noticed that when you made the initial launch post that you talked about, it's not just, technology or actually building houses, but you also have like a real estate component to it. So immigration is a
Sure.
big issue. Immigration is driving up a lot of the housing costs, and we don't know. It's very unpredictable. You don't know whether you're going to get like a large surge in a population or in a certain area. You also don't know with this new administration for the foreseeable future how much that's going to decline. So, do you plan to work with any real estate agencies, any local government agencies to ensure that actually, American citizens can actually get their homes? How do you plan to deal with that kind of rebounding demand for these houses? And the other issue with it is there's a good chance that labor could dry up in construction. That's an issue, and that Texas is starting to face with increased enforcement. So, with the technology, with your expertise, and working with realtor companies and working with local governments, how do you think that you could address this sort of a volatile issue in the housing
The
market?
second question is certainly not easier to answer. The second one is like our company again has really smart, very highly trained, engineers. So we are trying to build housing with high skill talent that will certainly be paid more than lower skill construction labor, again, regardless of their immigration status. That's what we're fundamentally trying to do, for better and for worse. Like, we're trying to build homes. Again, it's not for better for us. I think it's for better, right? Like, I'd say
Right.
we're trying to add to the overall housing stock. So I think there's a few different things. One, since we're doing homes in a different method, I don't think that we affect, I think we just increase the total number of homes that are being built. However many homes the traditional construction industry builds, like,
Right.
they're going to keep doing that. They're not going to. Unfortunately, the housing crisis is not going to resolve, right? Like, the homes still need to be built. So I think they'll continue to build homes their way. Maybe they're slower because there's less labor, but ours will just continue to be built in our way. And God willing, as we build more factors, we can increase that even more. On the first problem, I'd say, we are. I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly how to think of that problem. Like, I think that's probably an issue that needs to be built to like addressed by someone else. Like, I do think that
Right.
who and how qualifies for different kinds of mortgages and how those work. Like, that's going to need to be like addressed through those appropriate agencies. And what's the right way for me to answer that one. And I mean, I don't know. To me, I guess I just come back to, like, it's not just a crutch, but it happens to be true. Like, I come back to the mantra of, like, what I want to happen is, like, the crisis that we're trying to build is, like, people who can afford an apartment can't afford to buy a house, right? So I want to buy a house. I want to build
Right.
for those people, right? Like, and again, people who are seeking economic opportunity, or people who are seeking to go live like near their grandparents, right? Like, there aren't existing homes near there, which is why I think there does need to be appropriate levels of like added density to some existing neighborhoods. Again, the quality problem fixes, I think, some of those different issues. I wouldn't want to live next to something that looks awful. I don't want to force that on anyone else.
Right.
And yet still there is this human thing of, like, for grandparents to like continue to age like in a home where lots of people are getting older, and for their grandkids not to be able to form houses nearby, like, that also feels dystopian, right? Like, that doesn't feel good either. Families generationally should be together.
Right. Well, you can't obviously
But
control the immigration flow. So you have to just make sure that you're rather
Yep.
productive with the labor you have, and you're not hit by the
I don't
labor
think we will be.
shortages, but
I don't
you're
think we're
also,
affected by that at
you
all.
know,
Yeah.
I right. Well, and I also don't think that you're going to, especially within the few short years, and I don't think the immigration or population issue is going to decline so fast that you guys end up overproducing. So I know there's only like a certain amount that you can do with that, especially in local areas. But I would say you talk about
Yep.
family friendly design and making it like a nice area. How do you think a row home can fit within these dense areas, beautify the area and make sure that we're bringing in the right kind of people that actually want a community to succeed and will be invested in there. So that way you're not, this is an issue with apartments is they kind of stand up wherever and any kind of person is attracted to them and you're not sure whether they buy in. And it can create this sort of mismatch between the type of environment you want to build and the type of environment you actually build. So how do you think the row homes and the sort of designs and aesthetics that you use can actually build
Yep.
a beautiful neighborhood for families that invites warm
I think
neighborhood
the
development?
easiest way to address that one is, and I mean, if you follow me at all on Twitter, you know, a bit like I like to talk about floor plans a lot, and so I think the easiest way where I can see the difference between what we're building and what goes elsewhere is like we are going to build homes where the secondary bedrooms are smaller, and the reason why we're going to do this is because like a small child does not need a bedroom the same size. Like I don't know any family who thinks like your parents'
Right,
bedroom should be as large as like all of your other children's bedrooms. And that's implicitly like how
right, right,
um I'd say like that's roommate oriented design, right? Or that's suites. It's like it might be a 3 bedroom unit, but it's really like for 3 separate groups of people or 3 individuals, right? Like whether they're in college or whether they're
right.
something else. Like that's a little bit different. And that neighborhood is fundamentally going to be a little bit more transitory because that person's there for there to work. But once you have a partner, you're going to want to move into something else. So that to me is the very is a very specific kind of product that is missing. Is like um, people are always going to move into the city for economic prosperity or economic opportunity or for school or something, or just because they like the hustle and bustle of it. But they don't have anything to move into right now that's being built um, where when they want to make those choices, they can stay. So either they delay having children or they move out. And I think we are unfortunately seeing like the kind of divergence of those some of those kinds of different neighborhoods, some of which are economically quite prosperous and yet just like don't have children, which is a little bit strange. Again, I don't I don't want to force that choice on anyone, but I think some of it ends up becoming this reinforcing effect where they think, well, I mean, I'm sure you've seen all these different things online. All these people say like, I make this amount of money and I can't possibly afford to have children. And I don't think they're all delusional,
Right.
although some of them maybe are. And some of the posts I'm sure are trolls, but like it is the case. There are different neighborhoods where there are people who make a lot of money and yet like feel like they can't. And so I think this in between product of what we're doing
Right.
again, like smaller overall size with smaller secondary bedrooms. I mean, we will be required by the federal government to sell to whoever qualifies who comes. So maybe that is roommates, or maybe that is like, an expectant parent, or maybe it's a parent or a family who already has kids, or maybe there's, a grandparent there too. So whoever that is, we will have to sell or rent to them. But I think the intentional design of saying we want to design something that is good for a particular group can help make those things better. And again, the other sort of last silly example is if you've seen some of the different designs, like one of the things I'm very proud of we put in, which might seem a little bit, I don't know, not that much, is like I really like the idea of doing built-in banquet dining tables, right? Like they're not really necessary if you're living in a one-bedroom apartment or a small unit by yourself. But for anyone who has kids or has been around kids, like they just need a table or they need benches, they need a place to put like a high chair. And while you can do it on a kitchen island, it isn't just quite the same. So families need dining tables. They need different places for cooking, for preparing, for sitting, and then for living room. And I think like us doing things like that, it's not just an appropriate signal for who this is for. It is making the thing particularly good for someone staying in that house and having kids and raising them there. Sure.
Well, and it sounds like you put a lot of thought into the idea of how are we going to make it so these are family friendly and people can actually grow their families
Right.
without, delaying it well into their 30s when, other things might come up. So I guess, where do you
Hmm.
think, you're starting with row homes, where do you think you could scale next, and what are the future plans? Because I had this idea bouncing around in my head a while ago. Like, why can't we just, industrially manufacture, 3D print all the materials of a house and then assemble it on site or ship it, to avoid all the logistics? So where do you think you could go from row homes, and what do you think the future kind of plans would
Well,
look like?
you're asking me to dream a bit. I would say, like, we I mean, the current largest home builder in the United States builds 100,000 homes a year. That's D.R. Horton, and we want to build 1 million, right? So we'll have to build a lot of different types if we can do that. But I think the principle is that we want to build the things that other people don't want to build, right? So I'd say, like, people build relatively inexpensive homes, or existing home builders build relatively inexpensive homes on the fringe of the metro pretty well. They could maybe, reduce costs a bit from, $100 a square foot to $90 a square foot. And that would be like a benefit. And the company who do that could be valuable. But I think where we are going to be the most impactful is in building in those areas and of those types that, like, other people cannot do because they are just not as good as at engineering and design, and overall corporate structure as us. So I think, like, that's where I hope we grow. Our company's 18 months old, so we don't exactly know. But, like, I'd say those are the dreams that I have for it. It's that, like, all the other projects that other people say, like, no thanks, I'll pass. Like, I want us to build all of those.
Right. Well, and I guess, the regulatory environment, whether it's with Trump, whether it's with the local government or a future president, what changes and, collaborations would you like to see at the local level, the national level, and to the general regulatory environment,
Yeah, of
so it's
course.
easier for, not just you guys to succeed, but other companies, so that way we can, actually tackle the issue of building
Um,
homes where people would want to live.
I would say the thing that makes it simplest is when the rules are all the same. The hardest part right now is that it is. This might blow your mind. Um, Building height isn't measured the same way in multiple different cities, right? Like, so, like, that as, like, a regulation type thing. Like, you can't even, like, automate zoning codes quite the same way when, like, foundational definitions, like, aren't similar. So I would say the thing that would help us, I mean, it almost feels like too low of a different thing, but it's like, just like, whatever the rules are, make them the same, and then we can all do it. Now, obviously, there are bad rules and there are good rules, or there are good rules and there are worse rules. I think, like, to me, one of the things that, like, and I have talked to different people both at the state and at the federal level about this one a bit, is I think that housing should be looked at not just by the number of units that's produced, but by, like, the bedrooms, or at least taking into account the type that's being used. Like, right now, there are different areas where it would be considered better to build 3 studio apartments than 1 3-bedroom unit because you've added 2 more affordable housing units. And I can understand a bit of that, but, like, I just don't think that there has been. Um, I'd say, like, I don't think that building 3 400 square foot studios is, like, 3 times better than building one affordable 1,200 square foot 3-bedroom apartment that works for a family. And so I'd say in a few little tweaks like that, things are helpful. I think it is certainly going to be helpful that, like, as both technology improves within some types of driverless technology, I think it'll be easier for common spaces to be better for, you know, if you don't need a garage in your backyard, you can have, like, a row house could have, like, a much better, you know, private garden, right? I mean, again, right, right,
Right. Well,
yeah,
I saw the designs, and it was very well done
that's right,
because you're maximizing the efficiency of the space you're using.
sure,
And one thing I would say, or rather, the last question, you talk about how, all of these different areas have different zoning codes, and that's another idea. I have a friend in real estate, and I was talking to him about this. Like, why can't we, standardize a platform? And I know you guys employ software, in your company to, smooth things along. So, like, the issue you're saying is that you can't even standardize all of the regulations, because my initial thought was, why don't you just build a platform that home builders can use, and they can, automate the approval, the regulation, and all of that. And you're saying it's completely different across all of these different areas. So how do you think you could use software to sort of go around that problem while it still exists? Make sure that you're not spending as much time on regulation, because my understanding is the cost of housing is massively driven up by these,
yes, I would say
regulations that
the
vary from
main
state
way
to
they
state.
are driven up is like I said, most by the fact that they are different. So like the thing that investment doesn't like is uncertainty, right? So if they can know
Right.
what something is, even if it's going to take a long time or even if it's going to be expensive, it can get priced in. And so it would shift money around who gets it. But like if the city said, we are going to let everyone build something immediately, but they were going to add this extra fee. Well, what would happen is all the owners of land would lose that fee. They would lose the $25,000. The city would get the $25,000, but the homes would get built quickly. So that's efficient. I would say how we're going to, but that aside, how we're going to do it with software is just by building even more sophisticated software that says like, well, we are in fact going to like take the fact that the height is measured differently in two different cities, and they measure like, and they have groundwater differences elsewhere, and one is in a floodplain and one isn't, and this one has rock and that doesn't. We will just have to build like even more complicated software that can be like bespoke to each site. I'd say like I don't think there's any way around that part too much. It's just an incredibly hard problem, which is one of the reasons why no one has done it before. And I think that's a what's the right word?
Right.
That makes me excited about the problem, right? Because it means like, when you do something, it's always a dummy who says, why has no one done this before? And a little bit it's like, the Chesterton's fence thing. But like there are good reasons why the problem that we're trying to tackle hasn't started yet. Right. Like
Right.
we'll just have to be really, really, really clever and smart at tackling those problems in the lowest way possible. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you,
Thank you
giving
very
me your
much.
time and answering all these questions. I'm really excited about what you guys are doing, because there's only so much that the government can do to fix these problems, and some people have to actually step in and do the work. So very excited for what you guys are doing. Do you want to shout out your co-founders? Give us your social medias and how we could find like the
Yep.
American Housing
We're the American
Corporation, how
Housing
we can find you
Corporation.
guys in the
Website
near
is
future.
americanhousing.co. My co-founders are, Riley, Will, and Harris. They're brilliant. We have a bunch of other team members too who are all amazing and work far harder than me. And I mostly just fly around and like look at sites, and they actually build all the really hard stuff that gets the things done that makes what I do possible. So anyway, I'm incredibly proud to be part of this team. Thanks, Armin.